When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child, and I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. February 24th, 1901 was an eventful day in the life of Gustav Mahler. In the afternoon, the 40-year-old composer and conductor led the Vienna Philharmonic in their first performance of the Fifth Symphony by his former mentor, Anton Bruckner. That evening, he conducted a gala performance of Mozart's The Magic Flute at the Vienna Opera. A young woman named Alma Schindler, who would become Mahler's wife less than a year later, was in the audience. After watching him conduct, she reportedly said to her companions, "That face, those pale cheeks, those eyes like burning coals. This man can't go on like that." Later that night, Mahler awoke to find himself lying in a pool of blood. A doctor was called, and then a surgeon who noted that if he'd arrived a half hour later, it would have been too late. A severe hemorrhage in Mahler's upper intestinal tract was diagnosed, and the bleeding was eventually staunched. A successful operation was performed a week later, but Mahler was forced to abandon professional activities for more than a month while convalescing at a Vienna hospital and then at home. Painful symptoms continued, requiring a second operation in June. While the extent to which Mahler's life was actually in danger has been debated, a remark he made to a friend clearly indicates that he believed the peril he'd faced was mortal. "You know, last night I nearly passed away. When I saw the faces of the two doctors, I thought my last hour had come. While I was hovering on the border between life and death, I wondered whether it wouldn't be better to be done with it at once, since everyone must come to that in the end." Unsurprisingly, Mahler appears to have emerged from this crisis with altered perspectives. His disciple, the conductor Bruno Walter, noted in him a deepened realism and sobriety. The fact that this brush with mortality and the bouts of post-operative depression that followed occurred just as Mahler was entering midlife certainly made him ripe for a reassessment of both his existence and his accomplishments to date. For generations, musicians have turned to the music of Johann Sebastian Bach for enjoyment, instruction, and consolation, and Mahler was no exception. During his recovery, he plunged into the great Baroque master's works and emerged refreshed, marveling at what he called this miraculous freedom, which is based on his unparalleled skill and technique. In Bach, all the cells are united as the world is in God. There has never been polyphony greater than this. This renewed embrace of Bach as a composer whose art represents the highest standard of so-called absolute music would not only fundamentally determine much of the content in Mahler's Fifth Symphony, the outlook it generated also gave rise to the two symphonies that followed, resulting in a trilogy of purely instrumental, non-programmatic symphonies that form the core of his second creative period. While all of Mahler's works address basic existential questions, the manner of that address changed over time. The profound issues raised in his first four symphonies are confronted within a largely poetic, mystical context. The fanciful atmosphere of Des Knaben Wunderhorn, or The Youth's Magic Horn, an anthology of folk poems and songs that was one of Mahler's favorite books, is pervasive in this tetralogy, and the narratives and texts he found in this collection directly inform the substance of these explicitly programmatic works. But the composer's experiences during the first half of 1901 brought about a decisive shift in his artistic vision, a change he described in a letter to a friend about his plans for the Fifth Symphony. Neither romantic or mystical elements belong, and the human voice has absolutely no place in it. It doesn't need words, for everything is to be expressed in pure music. It will be a proper symphony, each movement independent, complete in itself, and linked to the others solely by affinity of mood. Mahler's Fifth was primarily written during the summer months of 1901 and 1902 in Meiernich, a lakeside hamlet in the southern Austrian province of Carinthia. As a self-described holiday composer, his creative work was usually confined to these summer vacation periods, while the more functional aspects of composition, such as orchestration and copying, took place during the regular concert season, when Mahler's conducting schedule occupied much of his time and left him in a frame of mind that wasn't conducive to developing new ideas. As a result, re-establishing his creative momentum was often a struggle, and Mahler wasn't able to begin composing the symphony in earnest until early July of 1901. Once begun, however, the work proceeded quickly. By the end of that summer, he completed the opening funeral march, which in its unrelenting despair stands in contrast to those in his early symphonies, the vehement, stormy second movement that closes the work's first part, and the massive 819-bar scherzo that forms the entirety of the symphony's second, an ebullient masterpiece of polyphony in which the material is, in Mahler's words, so thoroughly kneaded that there is not a single grain in it which isn't blended and transformed. The work's third and final part was written the following summer and consists of two movements, an adagietto for strings and harp that is thought to be an instrumental love song for Mahler's new wife Alma, and a rondo finale that is a veritable orgy of joyous Bachian counterpoint. Although the symphony's premiere in Cologne in October of 1904 was unsuccessful, Mahler remained undeterred. My present creative work is that of an adult, a man of ripe experience. Although I no longer attain my former heights of enthusiasm, I am now in full command of my powers and technique. I feel that I am master of my means of expression and capable of carrying out anything to which I put my hand.